film begins by showing a black man named Terry Richmond riding his bicycle towards the courthouse. Unexpectedly, Terry is struck by a police car driven by two officers, Marston and Steve. As soon as the officers step out of their vehicle, they immediately draw their guns on Terry, suspecting him of being involved in criminal activity. Although Terry is confident that he has done nothing wrong, the officers refuse to listen. As a result, they handcuff him and proceed to search all of Terry's belongings. During the search, Marston and Steve find a large sum of cash wrapped in plastic, leading them to believe it was obtained through a drug deal. Terry explains that the money is legal and is intended to bail out his cousin, who is being transferred to prison. However, the officers still confiscate the cash, telling Terry that he will need to prove its legality if he ever wants to get it back. Reluctantly, Terry continues his journey to the courthouse with nothing but a police seizure notice. Inside, Terry approaches a staff member named Elliot, who works in the bail administration office. Terry then explains that the money he was going to use for his cousin's release was unjustly seized by the police, but Elliot is unable to help since he's just an ordinary employee. Moreover, Elliot prepares to leave as his shift has ended, leaving Terry in a state of confusion. Fortunately, another employee named Summer offers to hear his story. While getting coffee, Summer explains to Terry that the police's seizure of his money is part of a civil asset forfeiture, making it difficult for him to reclaim the money. In fact, many cases like his end up with the money becoming police property if the owner can't prove its legality. Additionally, the most Summer can do is keep an eye on his cousin in case any important information comes up, while Terry searches for new funds to bail his cousin out. Terry is impressed by Summer, who appears intelligent and genuinely willing to help. Surprisingly, Summer had earned a law degree at 18 and had experienced a situation similar to Terry's, which motivates her to assist him. After leaving the courthouse, Terry borrows money from a Chinese businessman named Mr. Liu, who owns a restaurant and has been a donor to Terry. With the loan secured, Terry chooses to camp out in the forest overnight, as he plans to confront the corrupt officers from the Selby Spring Police Department the next day. The following morning, Terry reports the incident to an officer named Jessica, who is shocked by his story and immediately confronts Steve. However, Steve accuses Terry of filing a false report and tells him to leave. As tensions rise, a police captain named Sandy arrives to de-escalate the situation. Sandy claims that Terry is at fault for fleeing from the police, which aroused everyone's suspicions. Not wanting things to escalate further, Terry offers a deal, agreeing to let the police keep the majority of the money as long as he can keep $10,000 to post bail for his cousin. He also shares some information regarding his cousin's case. In the end, Sandy accepts the offer. After the deal was approved, Terry returned to the police station the next day. However, instead of meeting his cousin, Sandy intentionally toyed with Terry, telling him that his cousin had been transferred to another location on a court transport bus. Frustrated, Terry immediately set off on his bike to chase down the bus. Taking a shortcut through the forest, Terry managed to catch up to the vehicle and promised his cousin that he would free him soon. Unfortunately, when Terry contacted Mr. Liu about the loan, he discovered that the police had already raided the place, having tracked it down with help from Sandy and his associates. This left Terry completely without money to bail out his cousin, driving him to despair as he felt increasingly cornered. With no other choice, Terry returned to Summer at the courthouse. Sadly, even after explaining how the police had played him, Summer was still unable to offer much help. However, she pointed out that his cousin's detention didn't make sense, since his crime was only a minor offense. Summer also suspected that this might be part of a pre-planned scandal orchestrated by corrupt officials. The best Summer could do was hand Terry the court documents while he gathered the bail money. Meanwhile, the corrupt police officers began investigating Terry's background. To their surprise, Terry was a former Marine instructor with a prestigious military career in the U.S., although there was no record of him ever being deployed to a war zone. Before long, Terry returned to the police station. Confident that Terry had never seen combat, Steve and Sandy felt bold enough to confront him. At that moment, Sandy swaggered up to Terry, stating that he was deeply offended by his attempt to bribe him by offering part of the confiscated money, as Sandy believed his authority as police chief had been humiliated in front of his subordinates. Additionally, Sandy had made up his mind that he would never assist Terry in freeing his cousin. Even though Terry had been a Marine, the The fact that he had never been in active combat gave Sandy the confidence to disregard him. Unexpectedly, Terry attacked Sandy, triggering a fight. In short, Terry was seen walking into the police station, holding Sandy hostage while surrounded by his subordinates, who had their guns drawn. Terry immediately ordered Jessica to handcuff Sandy and Steve before opening the storage room, which turned out to contain various military weapons and all the confiscated goods. After retrieving part of his money as a down payment for his cousin's bail, Terry asked Jessica to pretend to handcuff him and escort him to a car, so Sandy's men outside wouldn't shoot him. Unexpectedly, Jessica showed a sign of sympathy toward Terry by driving him to a deserted road, where she let him go to continue his journey alone. Shortly after, Terry resumed his trip on his bike toward the courthouse. Once there, Terry anxiously met with Summer and handed over the down payment for his cousin's bail. While Terry was waiting for his cousin's release papers, the police had already arrived at the courthouse. Cornered, Terry raised his hands in surrender and was quickly subdued. Some time later, Terry woke up in a warehouse under medical supervision and with a police officer present. Once it was confirmed that Terry was in good condition, he was placed in a car with Sandy, who intended to drive him to a hospital where his cousin was being treated. During the ride, Sandy explained that all the items Terry had seen in the warehouse were confiscated goods that had legally become police property. Therefore, those items would be used by the police for their personal gain. Upon arriving at the hospital, Sandy returned all of Terry's money and planned to release him. Sandy then revealed that Terry's cousin had recently been attacked by prison gangsters, resulting in his hospitalization. Because of this, Sandy proposed a truce, not wanting to further escalate things with Terry. Therefore, he offered Terry a chance to leave the city immediately and never return. Sandy even offered him a car to make his departure quicker. Hearing this, Terry agreed to the deal and went to see his cousin, who was now in intensive care. Sadly, the hospital informed him that his cousin was in critical condition, with little chance of survival. Terry was given one last opportunity to say his goodbyes before his cousin passed away. Overcome with grief, Terry wept, as his cousin had been the most important person in his life, the only one who had always cared for him. After saying his final farewell, Terry was picked up by Summer, who drove him away from the hospital. However, along the way, it became clear that the police were still watching them. In the car, Summer explained that it was highly suspected that his cousin's detention had been orchestrated. She encouraged Terry to expose the scandal, but Terry, having lost his cousin, chose not to pursue it any further, believing it was too late. His only option now was to accept Sandy's peace offer. After leaving the city, Terry and Summer parted ways, thanking each other for their support throughout the ordeal. In short, Terry went to a car dealer to collect the car Sandy had promised him. Later that night, Summer woke up in shock to find an intruder who had secretly injected her with drugs, leaving her body weak. Struggling, Summer tried to call Terry for help. In response to the dangerous situation, Terry rushed to Summer's house, searching the place until he found Summer alive. When Terry suggested taking her to the hospital, Summer refused, revealing that she was under scrutiny due to her past as a drug addict. If it were discovered that she had used drugs again, Summer feared she would lose the custody battle for her child, which she was currently fighting for. Moreover, her ex-husband was more financially stable and capable of taking care of their child, so Summer would not allow that to happen. At that moment, Summer recounted her past, sharing how her husband had divorced her and taken their child away, accusing her of being an irresponsible mother. Hearing this, Terry offered his help, though Summer ultimately declined and thanked him for listening to her painful story. The next day, Summer returned to work as usual. However, before starting, she was required to take a urine test to prove that she was free from drug use. Despite pleading and negotiating, Summer eventually gave in and accepted her fate. As a result, it was certain that Summer would fail to gain custody of her child, all because of the drugs injected by a mysterious person the previous night. Meanwhile, as Terry was preparing to leave the city, he ran into Steve, who was on guard duty. Terry was ordered to stop, even though he had returned to the city intending to save Summer. Unexpectedly, Steve remarked that Terry had made a grave mistake by coming back, especially after being given the chance to leave by Sandy. Feeling confident and stronger with Terry alone, Steve immediately attacked him. In short, Terry was seen abandoning his car under a bridge and began walking on foot while calling Summer, who decided to meet him at a certain place. At the same time, the court official had just discovered that Elliot and most of the staff in his office had been collaborating with the police. It didn't take long for Summer to arrive at Mr. Liu's Chinese restaurant. At that moment, Summer was taken by one of Mr. Liu's men to a back room where Terry was being treated for his injuries. After receiving care, Terry and Summer spoke privately. Terry then asked why the police hadn't deployed a task force to capture him. Where Summer suspected that the police intentionally kept the case under wraps so it wouldn't spread beyond the city, let alone reach the capital. This way, they could continue their corrupt activities such as framing people and extorting money from them, just as they had done to Terry. After hearing Summer's explanation, Terry realized that the only clue left to uncover the truth was the recording still held at the courthouse. Determined, Terry assured Summer that he had made up his mind to fight the corrupt police, especially after his cousin's death had left him with no fear of further loss. Shortly after, the two hurried to confront Elliot, who couldn't answer her questions about his involvement with the police. All he could do was plead with Summer and Terry to stop pursuing the matter. Before leaving, Summer mentioned something about children, family, and how Elliot would feel if such a situation happened to his own family. Just as they were about to depart, Elliot finally relented and provided a lead on evidence that could indict the corrupt police officers for their crimes. Without hesitation, Terry went straight to the prosecutor's house where the evidence was stored. During the interrogation, the prosecutor confessed that he had actually wanted to protect Summer and offered condolences for the death of Terry's cousin. The prosecutor also revealed that there had once been a case where a bishop stood up against the police but died under suspicious circumstances. At the time, the economic situation in Selby Spring was dire, which had affected the budget of the Selby Spring Police Department. Moreover, they were incompetent and unworthy of receiving substantial funding. As a result, the police resorted to illegal means to make money, much like what Terry experienced. Therefore, every criminal case that occurred in the city was manipulated by the police to keep it confined within city limits, ensuring they could maintain control and prevent any scandal from leaking out. Upon learning this, Summer realized that the only recorded evidence was stored on the computer and CCTV footage at the courthouse. However, after the interrogation, they discovered that the prosecutor had taken pills that nearly caused his death. Without hesitation, they called the police to prevent the prosecutor's death before leaving the scene. Afterward, Summer decided to join Terry on his journey for justice, and they headed to the rundown warehouse beneath the courthouse. As they cautiously explored the warehouse, they found a group of police officers already gathered, preparing to burn the evidence room. Fortunately, the two managed to extinguish the fire. Once the fire was out, Summer and Terry began searching for the hard drive that contained evidence of the police officers' crimes. Although the hard drive was damaged, Summer managed to find an SD card that stored the CCTV footage, which included crucial evidence about the suspicious death of Terry's cousin. Afterward, they hurried out the same way they came and set the room ablaze again to avoid raising suspicion. However, just before they escaped, Summer suddenly remembered that she needed to retrieve her urine test results before losing custody of her child. Unfortunately, upon arriving there, Summer was caught by the police, who arrested her and dragged her into a car. Seeing this, a panicked Terry immediately followed the car, carrying Summer. Unexpectedly, Terry rammed the vehicle of a police officer named McGill, subduing him on the spot. Terry then interrogated McGill about Summer's whereabouts. Out of fear, McGill contacted another officer. Therefore, Terry quickly took over the conversation and began negotiating, offering to hand over the SD card he had taken in exchange for Summer's release. Hearing this, the police instructed him to make the exchange at a location called Rebel Ridge. The next morning, the police were already stationed in front of Rebel Ridge, fully armed and holding Summer in the back of a car. Not long after, a police vehicle arrived, which they suspected was driven by Terry. Meanwhile, Terry was seen calling Sandy, who was in the office with Jessica. At that moment, Terry explained that he hadn't acted violently since leaving the military, but this time he was fully determined to take down all the corrupt officers, including Sandy. Eventually, Terry warned Sandy to prepare, as he was far stronger and more dangerous than the corrupt officers imagined. On the other hand, when Marston approached the police car that had arrived, he found that Terry was not there, only McGill with his mouth taped shut. As a result, Marston then ordered the police to head to the station, suspecting that Terry was already there. Elsewhere, Terry was seen driving his car straight through the police station wall. As Sandy entered the vault, Terry was already inside and immediately attacked him. Soon after, Terry asked Jessica, who turned out to be a friend of Summer, to rescue her from the police car. In addition, Terry entrusted the SD card sought by the corrupt officers to Jessica. Terry then threatened to burn all the confiscated money if Sandy and the others didn't release Summer immediately. After that, Terry took all the weapons in the warehouse to prepare for a fight against the police officers surrounding the building. Unfortunately, Jessica betrayed him, siding with the corrupt police and pointing a gun at Terry, ordering him to surrender. Because of this, Steve immediately destroyed the SD card that Jessica had handed over, explaining that Summer's situation was dire because the police had deliberately injected her with a dangerously high dose of drugs. Feeling that his efforts were in vain, Steve prepared to kill Terry. At the same time, Marston intervened, pointing his gun at Steve, stating that this wasn't part of their plan. Not long after, Sandy suddenly appeared and shot Marston in the leg. While Sandy was calming his men, Jessica secretly gave Terry a chance to escape. With no other option, Terry grabbed his bag of weapons and ran, initiating a shootout. As they fought back, Marston, now assisting Terry, explained that he could save Summer using the medical equipment in the car's dashboard. Marston also turned on the dashboard camera, which would capture footage to incriminate the corrupt police. After that, Terry unleashed his skills, effortlessly defeating the corrupt officers. He eventually saved Summer and captured footage of Sandy aiming a gun at him. Terry then brought the car back to Marston, asking how to heal Summer with the medicine inside. Additionally, Terry invited Marston to come with him. Determined not to let Terry escape, Sandy ordered all the police officers to pursue him before the footage could be leaked. Unfortunately, the tire of Terry's car had been punctured by gunfire, allowing the police to catch up. In the end, the three of them decided to break through the police blockade. Unexpectedly, Jessica appeared to help Terry, and they finally made it to the hospital to save Summer, who was in critical condition. Terry then pried open the car's trunk, which contained the incriminating footage of Sandy and the other corrupt officers, ensuring they would all be sent to prison. And the movie ends. Moral lesson from the story: never trust a police officer who offers to drive you somewhere. You might end up with a surprise detour through corruption and chaos. And remember, if you plan on being a hero, always check your bike tires first.